Okay, it is 5:59. Robert Morton, nice to see you.
It was a short drive.
Well, it's nice to have your neighbors close by.
Friends close, enemies closer? No.
There we go.
Whoa. Yeah, there you go.
This is a special meeting, January 5th. What? 6 p.m. District Board. Call to order. That was that. Pledge allegiance. Go for it.
All please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Director Beverly Fickus. Pam Beaver.
Scott McVeigh,
Terry Lincoln.
Paul Kelly, General Manager, and Melissa Penny, Bookkeeper, Tom.
And Logan's coming, he'll be late. Work.
Yeah, sure. Open time for public comment. Nobody?
I'm a happy citizen.
And there's no consent agenda, and it's old and new business now.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the 6A, which is bank selection for district banking services, as mentioned in my memo, when I came here and reported to the board a year and a half ago, I voiced that it's good practice to review your bank services and to consider making changes every 5 or so years. And Melissa put together an RFP, it's attached, it was sent to as many banks as possible. There were 6 banks that responded, there were 3 finalists. And I named them Chase Bank, their government services section, Umpqua Bank, and Plumas Bank. We reported to the Finance Committee and requested that a member of the Finance Committee help us review the proposals, primarily because we didn't want it as part of the Finance Committee. There may be, I don't know, some information in there that we just wanted to make sure that we were able to have review of. That happened in April. The chair of the Finance Committee was asked to help us with this. We had 2 meetings. One was to review their initial proposals. We had a big spreadsheet and all the different accounts, all the different fees, all the different items in there. And then we had some questions. Melissa was able to submit those to the banks. They responded, and we had a subsequent meeting, reviewed that, and came up with a recommendation. The primary elements that we have in here is that we're recommending that we select Plumas Bank. They have a local bank and a branch in Reading. They have a full suite of needed services. They have predictable and reasonable fees. We didn't want to put the exact amounts in here because it's hard to do, but of the 3 finalists, they were the most reasonable and predictable. In other words, there was a lot of variables with some of the bank services.
Were they that much cheaper than the bank we have now? Melissa says yes.
By a long shot.
Yeah, I don't know if I have the number. Do you remember the number, just in round numbers, how much cheaper?
About 400.
Yeah, a month.
That's substantial.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a lot of money for most.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember the number. They have experience with other similar sized water districts. They can get a list, and Melissa can report that she talked to at least one of them. They have local knowledge, and they have a knowledgeable has assured us that they will be, our ongoing contact. One of the concerns we had about Chase Bank is they're so huge, and obviously they have a subgroup of government services, but, you know, there's vice presidents rotating all the time, so your point of contact could change monthly, if you think. Even though we had a really good experience with the person that we were dealing with from Chase. Let's see, and size really to serve the district's current and potential future needs. We did, as a committee, have a discussion about how it's possible that maybe 5-10 years from now, we have more services needed, and maybe a Chase might be more applicable, but this Plumas appears to be much better services than what we currently have, at a more reasonable price, and really takes care of what we think we need now and in the next 5 years. With that, I'll just ask Melissa to take care of anything that I forgot, but we try to just boil it down into that.
Will they give us, or is it something they do where they give us the loan where we're, you know, the kind of the blanket loan while we're waiting to get paid our grants? Do they
You
do
mean
that?
line of credit or?
Like what RCAC would do for.
There's loans or lines of credit, so.
They do have those services available. Don't think we would go to them for a $2 million one that we're doing with this one, but we could use them for some of our other ones, similar to the line of credit we have with tri-counties. But even then, I mean, the tri-counties cost to put a line of credit is pretty significant. What was it recently, 12% or 11% interest?
Yeah, it was something.
Yeah, ridiculous.
Yeah, the RCAC loan is 5.5%. The other thing too is they have, we think it's gonna be a lot more friendly to put our savings accounts into kind of their sweep accounts that provide more interest. So instead of all these savings accounts that we have that aren't getting any interest, we can leverage that, and we may be able to use with other third parties on that. Any other stuff? I know I missed a bunch of things.
No, you did a pretty good job, actually. It was a difficult decision because the two finalists that we had, Chase Bank and Plumas, both had very good, people that we would be working with. They both had, you know, all the items that we needed, but Plumas had a little better pricing structure, for our needs, and I think we're going to get a little bit better customer service because we're going to have the one gentleman that is, our banking go-to here local, and he said that because Plumas is considered a concierge bank, that they give a little more personal one-on-one banking, relationship to their customers. He did give me 3-4 references for other water districts or municipality type districts that they work with. Only one of them got back to my emailed inquiry, but both ladies that worked at the water district, I believe it was Chester, said that they had come from working for Plumas. They had gone to the water district and they said that their entire experience of working for Plumas, they loved it. So they had just, you know, decided to move on to working for a water district instead, you know, the way things go. But both ladies said that they, you know, the water district uses Plumas, they had worked for Plumas and they loved the bank, which I thought was a glowing, you know, reference there. Just on a side note, the gentleman who's going to be our go-to at the bank actually had looked into going into the water business. He has his D1, so he's got a little bit of experience knowing our needs and things here, so, and working with other water districts as well. I think they're going to be very good for our current needs, and it seems like they're a growing bank as well. But everything, he was very quick about getting back to me with all of the questions, and their fee structure was phenomenal, and, I don't think we can go wrong with this bank.
Where are they located in Reading?
They are on, is it Hilltop or? I believe it's
Hilltop.
Hilltop.
Kind of across the street from, the Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, that's it.
Where Members First is? That's Members
No,
First.
it's right over across from the B of A.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tri-County.
Oh, that one, a little half a block up.
That's
So the only concern I have is our petty cash. So just something to keep in mind, that maybe we may have to increase it, because now you're driving. a
It's
little-
on my way home, I live on Hilltop.
Oh. Let her go home early and,
Yeah,
I've
That's
done,
what we do
yeah.
now, so.
yeah.
Just, one other quick add-on is that, we decided to, propose an ordinance for your, consideration tonight, so that we can select the bank. We wanted to be able to give the bank something, that we actually made the decision. As you know, putting signers on our previous bank, we usually did it by motion, and then we showed them the minutes. It might take me a little while to get the minutes done, and we wanna transition to the new bank by July 1 or on July 1. So we actually have, in this ordinance, the initial list of account signers. And I actually have the documents in my folder here for you to fill out. And I also have a copy of this, ordinance for the chair to sign tonight. Future account signer updates, when we add or select, we can do it through motions and minutes and all the rest of that stuff. But that's why this ordinance looks the way it looks. The bank needed something, they said, well, some kind of resolution that says you selected us would be great. So once we do this, we'll get this to the bank, we'll get all, the signed documents, et cetera, and then we will, work on, we also will be sending out to all of the proposers that we've made a selection, and then we also need to send something to tri-counties to say we're moving to a new bank, and this is our bank, and this is who you need to work with. Any other questions? Questions from
Anybody?
public?
Just one comment, I'd like to thank Melissa for her efforts in getting this done.
Do you need a motion?
I do need a motion in a second.
I'll make that motion that we switch banks to unplug from our current trade account. Plymouth, sorry, you're right. And that we change banks to Plymouth.
So that would be ordinance 2024-08.
so we're adopting ordinance 2024-08. I'll second that motion, or did you already? Okay.
All in favor?
Aye. I guess one abstain, can we do that since he's gonna be showing up later?
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I think my staff is more excited, but I'm excited about, changing.
Real quick, does everybody understand what a sweep account is?
No, never heard the term.
Yeah, for the recording, anybody else,
Sure.
maybe just a quick explanation.
So in a normal savings account, you have a set percentage that you earn, usually per annum, on that savings account. What a sweep account does is it takes one or multiple of your accounts, it sweeps it into a higher, payout range, so a higher earning, there you go, there's the word, a higher earning, account, with multiple other monies from other, clients that get swept into that account as well, so you have a better earning rate. And for however long you decide to put it in there, it earns at that rate, and then when you decide to pull it back out into your accounts, you get the money earned for the time period that you had it in there. And it could be a couple days, it could be a couple weeks, a month, whatever you decide, it's completely up to us what we do. But because you're sweeping it into this account with multiple other earners, you get that better rate than what you normally would in a normal savings account. So that's what a sweep account is.
So we could put some of our non-restricted reserve accounts into that, the WINAC reimbursement account. And it gets hit for most of the year, and then be swept into the general fund to be used. Whereas we're not getting any interest on it really, are we? Minimal,
Not on the general fund because it
Yeah.
is a checking account, but with Plumas, we can sweep some of the general funds, that are, if we have any excess into it, but we are also able to sweep the savings into it to earn that higher rate,
good.
so.
I have a question. Is it FDIC insured?
There is one that is, and there is one that is not, and the fees for each are different, and the rules for each are different, so.
Which are you going to choose?
We'll have to make a decision at the time when we decide to do that, but there's not anything set right now, for it. It's just that we have these options.
Right, because Plumas is a smaller bank,
Yes.
and chances are it's not gonna go under, but nobody knows for sure, so.
More likely we'll use the FDIC insured versions, but you're right.
Say,
Yeah.
You have packets back there?
Yes, there's one right
There's
here.
one right here.
There should have been one at your place, but I guess we forgot. For Director Johnston's, sake, we just did the bank selection ordinance, so moving forward on that. All's well, thanks.
So for the record, Logan Johnston is here now.
Yes,
Yes.
576.
We reported that you were.
All right, any other questions? No, I think it's good, thank you again, I think we'll be well served. All right, so next up is our fiscal year FY 2025 draft budget. This is, one of the primary reasons for this meeting is to basically have a little bit of a review and workshop of the draft budget for everybody to see prior to its final adoption for consideration on June 19th. So just a quick review, general manager put together to the finance committee a preliminary draft budget. You might recall that last year we did the draft budgets until we got to the final budget, and then I put together that budget narrative that was the booklet, which helps kind of describe all of the different accounts. So this year I decided to use that as a little bit of a template so that we describe it as we go through. The committee, finance committee, which is one of their primary tasks, by the way, is to review the budget and make recommendations. And one of their primary recommendations, which is a policy recommendation, is to focus as many funds as possible on the treatment plant needs. So you might recall that we talked a lot about it during the usage rate considerations, that the treatment plant has had a bit of deferred maintenance and is going to need some major maintenance or major repairs. We've heard about Train 6, we've heard about Train 4 that's going in a similar direction, and that we'll need to use some of our general funds to direct towards this and other major repairs. Also, the state provided, as they do every 2 years, their sanitary survey of the treatment plant, which assesses the plant, and it has had recommendations that have run through it the last 8-10 years, and we have yet to do an assessment of those recommendations. There's also, we just had the Whiskeytown treatment plant tank inspected, and they have some recommended repairs. We have a water master plan from 2007 that does need to be updated, and I think one of the things that we, at least I think, is that master plan, 2027 is a good year to do it, to get it done, right? Every 20 years doing your master plan update. On the other hand, I'd kinda like to get started on it here in the next 18 months, because I wanted to have some of those capital improvement items in it that we would need as we come up with our rates, the next time we do a rate study. Your general manager had spread out some of that. Like at one time, we had talked about improving our equipment mix by purchasing, or at least looking at purchasing a vac trailer. And the committee has recommended let's put that off, and I would recommend that we put that off anyway, because we don't have any staff that we had 2 months ago when we were starting to look at proposals. So we kind of need to look at that. And on that point, I've brought in a contract distribution supervisor, part-time, interim distribution supervisor who's very experienced. One of his, aside from a myriad of tasks he has, like drafting and completing our on-call procedures and doing all that stuff, but is to look at our equipment and our equipment mix and what we have some needs for. There's, we got an air conditioning unit that we've been told that we need to replace. There's just a lot, we know there's a lot of deferred maintenance that we need to deal with, but the second version, or the version that we're gonna go through right now, is the May 22 version. That has taken the recommendation from the Finance Committee to focus the resources that we have on paying for these engineering studies to get a real estimate and hold some money in reserve to actually start paying for the repairs. So it's part of the duties of the board, which is to provide these kind of direction. So if we just go to this page, or this May 22, 7 p.m. version, and the similar budget narrative version, I'll just quickly go through that, and then we'll deal with any questions you might have. I just want, the committee did request that I supply the board and the community the first version that we came up with, or the one that was brought to them, and that is I think it's the May 20th, 7 a.m. version, or 9 a.m. version, sorry. I mistyped it on the actual little narrative, but just so you know, you have a narrative and this particular budget as spelled out that I brought previously. So on the revenue, based on what was reported to me by Shannon, our admin assistant, you're currently at 2,656 accounts, or actually base rates. It's not actually accounts.
You said Shannon.
Shannon?
You meant Shannon?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, we put this together a month and a half ago.
Okay.
So it probably should have said our admin assistant at the time. And July 1, the base rates go to 58.20 at a 95% collection rate. We're currently running actually over our collection rate, but remember that has a lot to do with our all the delinquencies and our LEWOP support, etc. We also, so currently, a year ago, we had made what was kind of a significant change, because the district forever had been budgeting, or not forever, for the previous couple of years, at 2,710 accounts. You'll notice that that's also in your rate study. So last year there were about 111 1091 accounts, or 1081 accounts. So we were using 2699, I think it was, and 2599, 2600 accounts. So we have a few more because of the delinquencies. We not shut people off, or at least they're got returned on. But we still have, over 43 accounts that are 1081 accounts. So we also have our water sales, so 1,500 acre feet of M&I or domestic, and 700 acre feet of the ag, I just noticed a typo. So, that gives you your basic top line revenue of $2,265,000, which you can see we budgeted last year $2,197,000. We're not budgeting for any penalties exceeding water allocation because we are not in a drought. And we don't really budget for revenue for reconnection fees, even though we do get some revenue, as it relates to that. In the water service, revenue, we do have some, turn-on fees, revenue. The Centerville admin, we're not changing that, I think it's gonna be, pretty much the same. And, we have a little bit, we did fix the backflow maintenance charge revenue because, that is offset by a $6,500 cost, expenses. The designated revenue, the non-operating, which is our fees, the $755 a month for the filter plant, the recycled backwash water charge of 38 cents a month, the state loan repayment.
Wait a second, under convenient fees,
No,
No, designated revenue.
designated, 13,000.
He jumped down.
I know, but that is, we talked about that, we said it might be zero. We're just gonna leave it in?
Yeah, I mean, it's so small, it's not, $750, and, I don't know. Melissa, I think when we talked about this, we haven't used it, so we don't really know what it's really for.
Yeah.
But I think in the past, the district, actually charged a little bit extra for, whether it was taking phone payments or something like that. So we need to check into this one, this is just a carryover.
And my one other question is, have we in our newsletter notified our people that we're going to start charging them for turning the water on and off, on off hours? We've talked about it.
So we do, charge people for that. We have not charged them for the weekend on-calls, and that was in their, notice when we informed everyone we were changing over to the new software, that we are now able to identify these off-hour turn-on, turn-offs. But it's a really good reminder, because I don't think we followed up from that, and it should be in the newsletter.
To be honest with you, I think we need to put it in big bold prints, and for two reasons. One is, they'll see that we're charging them, but for the other reason is, maybe it will cut down on the guys having to come in on the weekends. If we make it so evident that they can't miss that, it's gonna happen.
Remember, we don't charge people during normal business hours.
Correct.
But no, it's a really good one.
Can I make a comment? If you,
But it's up to the chair.
can I make a comment,
Yeah,
Mr.
go
Chair?
ahead.
If you start charging people, I'm afraid they'll just do it themselves. Is that I mean,
If they break it, they buy it.
Yeah,
Pretty much.
I'll give you my 2 cents worth. We're talking about after hours, so what a customer will do is they call, we have to pay an employee 2 hours of overtime to come out and turn that water off. And then the customer does their weekend work or whatever they do, and 4 hours later, they call back and say, I want the water turned back on. The employee comes back in, and another 2 hours of overtime. So you're looking at a lot of money to do that. So yes, some people can't, because they're working during the day, and they can't do it during normal work hours. And they risk the part of breaking it, and so
so how much would it be say if on the weekend you had a leak and you needed the water turned off and turned back on, what would the total be then?
What do we got,
$100.81.
I think it is,
Yeah.
So I did, a couple things to just to comment. I think if you have a customer leak and it's identified by the responding person, we're gonna see that that's part of what we're gonna write up. I think that's not as much of the issue as especially during the drought. It's been a little bit less so here, but where customers have leaks that they are unwilling to fix. So they've had their water off all week. So then they call the district at 6 o'clock on a Friday to come turn on their water so that they can take a shower, wash their clothes, and do a whole bunch of other stuff. And then at 8 o'clock the next day, they call the district to come and turn it off. And they'll do that off and on
Yes.
thing because they're not willing to do it. So I think, if we have a documented leak and it was identified at a time, we will listen to customer appeals and figure out how to deal with that. It's really the repeated, and I think what a lot of the board members have seen over the time is, wow, the same address, they're going to turn it off.
It's the people who are abusing it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
I didn't realize people were doing that, because I can't even imagine
No.
not having we had a leak, we had it turned off, and I was without water for a day. I mean, I was going nuts, I keep going to the faucet and turning it on. So I don't see how a person could possibly go a whole week without water.
well, they can.
We've seen, sometimes in the 2-week payroll that they've gone out 3 or 4 times, 5 times. We're looking at 2 hours overtime, that's time and a half on their regular pay, times 2. And, it's $8, $12, $14,000 a year.
And it's been on the books, it's been on a rate sheet that we charge for that after hours, it's in the rules and regulations.
I wonder if you should tell them how much
Oh,
you
yes.
charge.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because in that blurb that you wanna remember, cause that would really catch their attention.
Yeah,
If it's a small leak, all they gotta do is wait until normal business hours,
Yeah.
it's done, no charge.
Yeah, well, if you got a big leak like we have,
Yeah.
you don't have a choice.
No, you don't have a choice, and I think, and obviously, the charge thing is an issue that we do need to focus on in the next fiscal year. We have to update those, and just for the board's purposes and the audience, prior to 2021, the district every January had a rate sheet that they adopted, and it had hourly charges for service, it had but it also, had how much it costs for engineering services, how much it costs for whatever it might be, it had all the different fees. And then it also had your base rate and your, unit charges in there. And then when we went through the Prop 218 process, the, property related charges, the base rate and usage, went through that process and has a 5-year schedule. And, then obviously lots of turnover here, and so nobody's gone back to update these other, that's why we have currently a charge of $100.81, because it was
they were 1.9%.
1.9% more than $100, and it was expected that 12 months later it would get another inflationary bump. We just haven't gotten to that, and, there's a lot of issues that we'll deal with that, but it's a good reminder and a good suggestion to make sure that happens. As we go down, again, the designated revenue, those are all the different fees, so that's the revenue that comes in. As we've reported in the past, though we don't report on a regular basis, the quote expense side, but these are going into reserves, but for balancing the budget purposes, there's a whole section 7,000 that pulls those dollars out, just so that the budget doesn't get too out of whack. On page 6 of the narrative, there's the use of reserves. And so, I want to point out to you, 1,400, $13,000, the WINAC reserves. Last year, we used $50,000 from the WINAC, reserve account to pay back the general fund operating account, because the general fund operating account had paid the WINAC obligation. We also, remember, the boards wanted to use, those penalties to offset, so we identified them in the budget, even though they would stay in the account. On page 6, there's an updated write-up of the WINAC reserves to operating. Couple of things, just wanted to point out to the board, the original WINAC obligation amount was $859,452, and that was to convert the contract into a perpetual contract. Then there was the $207,952 found as a credit. The Bureau attributed that quote credit as a payment because the district hadn't made any payments for a year. Then the fee was instituted, and based on Melissa's and my review in trying to answer Director Fickus's question, which is how much of that fee just was absorbed into the general operating as kind of a payback to what we were doing prior to when it got brought in and then put into and actually tracked by being put into the reserve account. So we were able to find that based on the bank accounts and old customer billing software, there was $27,496.78 that was absorbed into the operating account. So that would reduce the customer's fee obligation of repayment. And then, so you've got your calculation there, the $651,500 minus the $27,497 is your $624,003. And then if you obviously back out $50,000 that gets attributed for this current fiscal year, and then if we go to the 55, you could get this paid off in 10 years. Obviously, there's more money accumulating in the WINAC, so you could, the board at their discretion down the road could accelerate that, but that would be up to the board. So that's an update on that.
So an estimate of about what, 12.2 years?
He just said we
He said
could do
10 years.
10 years, good.
Yeah, previously it was
about
12,
13.
but now, based on this updated accounting, we knew that there was money because the district was not. So basically, September 1 of 2021 till May of 2022, the $1.88 fee was just collected and not reconciled by moving it to the reserve.
Right. Okay.
And then, we've had an increase in property tax revenue. This is pretty close to what, we're gonna get for this current fiscal year. So bottom line, your gross revenue is $3,282,000, for this year. So if we go to the next page, the first expense item is where we see a significant change from last year, because we had budgeted $200,000 out of our operating funds to pay the WINAC payment. And we also had purchased McConnell water, so we knew pretty much what that was gonna cost. So last year we had over $450,000 worth of budgeted expenses, and this year we have $110,000 budgeted expenses, and that's based on 2,200 acre feet of water from the Bureau at their costs. On top of page 8, you see that basically spelled out if we hit exactly that number. And so that's why our costs on that side are significantly less. So there's a lot of deferred maintenance we had to do, and deferred expenses to make those payments, so now we can start reallocating it to other items. If we go to the treatment plant, and you'll see that is the recommended expenses for those items. After our finance committee, we made a few modifications, a lot of it based on the April report that we brought to you that was actuals for 3 quarters. Again, I think this is accurate. The main thing I want to mention is 30600, which is the equipment, capital, and facility improvement section. So this is where we've got a couple of expenses. One is that every 5 years in Shasta County, all of the treatment plants in the county have to have a survey, and all of the districts and cities have always used an engineering firm to do that all for them, and we run that through the city of Reading. So in other words, if we had it done for ourselves, it costs around $40,000. Our share of the cost for everybody is about $20,000. No, I'm sorry, it's $10,000. The other thing that's in here is we really need, as you might recall, we've got a company that took a look at train 6, the one that's failing, and they have recommended it's about a $300,000 repair. And so if we're going to spend that kind of money, we can't just take one person's estimate, plus we haven't had any engineering review of it. So there's $20,000 of this cost is to do what we talked about back during the usage rate hearing, which is to have an engineering assessment of all of the trains and to get an engineering cost. And the other reason to do this is I'm hopeful that we'll also get some sense of what it costs to get train 4 so it doesn't fail and become like train 6. And possibly, instead of it $300,000 for train 6 and $300,000 for train 4, if we do them together, right, your mobilization costs are down and everything else, maybe we can get them for less and that'll help. The other item in here is we did have an assessment of our tank up at the treatment plant. It's a 1 million gallon tank. It looks almost as bad as it is. It's got a rusting looking, it's, if you're on Page Bar Road, you can't miss it because the car fire burned everything around it. There's a lot of rusting on the inside of it, and so they dove in and took a look around. And so we've asked Pace for an estimate, and they think it's about $13,000 to do an engineering estimate on that as well, to see what it takes to actually accomplish that project. So that's what makes up most of that $45,000. I also will just mention that some of the things that we're deferring or trying to save in our expenses, the committee has recommended that we hold on to that to see what we will do in the past. But I'll talk about that more when we get to the end, which is our discretionary fund balance. So any questions on that expense? Let's go back to it.
How did we decrease utilities by $12,000 up there?
Well, it's primarily because, based on the amount of water that's going through, and what we did is I had suggested that we have somewhere around 75,000 be our utility amount, but our current utilities there, I can't remember now, basically is running less than what we're budgeted, so we just divided it by 9, multiplied it by 3, and added it back in, and it comes out closer to 60,000 than 75.
Logan, when we had the special meeting, the one on the right were the numbers that all came in with, and basically, we asked him to pare it down as much as possible, and we suggested certain amounts, just because our goal is to get train 6 done.
So in your packet, you're gonna have this version here, which
Yeah.
is the revised one. there's another pet,
Previous or
yeah,
version
then, yeah,
from
and then
April?
there's another one there, so you can compare.
Okay.
So what we did is the goal was where can we cut based upon what our numbers were running? And so, I felt pretty good about being able to cut certain things. We might make a mistake in a couple of them, but we tried to bare bone it a little bit so that we could come up with some money to get train 6 taken care of this year.
Absolutely.
This is part of the policy call that you are directing me to do, because the other thing, Logan, that we talk about, or Director Johnson, we talk about is that what we say, we take some of it and invest in actually doing the assessment, and then we put the rest of it in this little reserve down at the bottom. Then when we find out, oh, we can get train 6 done for whatever, and we can get a grant or some money from here, we can take the money we have in reserves and match it, we can go get that thing done now, well, that's the plan, right?
Yep.
But obviously, if at the end, if 6 months comes along and we find out that we may have trimmed the utilities too much, well, then maybe we take a little money out of that reserve and move it back to that.
Also understanding that Centerville pays 25% of the cost.
Right. Okay, so in the distribution, division, again, there weren't as many, but I would just point out to you a couple of items there. One, our repair and maintenance is definitely running, more than we had budgeted, so we've increased the budget there. And in we had not previously budgeted for or tracked the water quality analysis. And we are pretty convinced that, that had previously been budgeted in the water analysis for the treatment plant. So one of the reasons why you'll see a reduction in the treatment plant water analysis budget is because we've actually are better identifying, that's first of all, tracking what it's currently costing us, and we've added a line here under distribution for analysis, because distribution has to do 10 or 12 water tests a month, and so we're making sure that, it's actually tracked in the distribution side of things. I had, recommended under the 40490, the equipment, facility, and capital improvements. If you happen to split back to the back, you'll see that that number was 115,000 or so, and that was because we were looking at, funding a back trailer, even funding some other items, but again, I think it's better to hold off on that until we kind of know what we have. And an equipment, analysis, but I do need to, mention that, the district has deferred deferred investments in its equipment, and it can't do that too much longer. All of its vehicles need to be reviewed, we have a lot of other things that we need to deal with. We do need to figure out whether or not we still need our dump truck, now that we don't have a Class A, licensed driver. So there's a lot of those kind of things, but we are gonna need to put those on there, because traditionally what you would have is you would have all your equipment on a capital improvement plan / equipment improvement plan, and you would have it on a depreciation schedule. In other words, you would be budgeting, putting $10,000 or $15,000 aside into investing into equipment purchases or whatever else it may be, and we just really haven't done that. And it's okay to defer it, but you can't defer it forever. So your total expense in.
But to your point, Paul, we're not deferring a lot of it, we're trying to gather the money to take care of some of the problems. So we're not deferring like the maintenance on the water treatment plant, because we're gonna try and take care of that. I understand what you're saying, but we are dealing with some of the deferred items.
Yeah, it's.
But there are a
We're
lot of,
focusing it on the treatment plant a little bit more here. I mean, this building got some deferred maintenance items on it, the shops have all done that thing. In other words, we're not yet investing in that, but we're gonna focus the resources that we have based on the recommendation on treatment plant, which obviously is pretty darn important, because, we
no
can't,
water.
we don't have water. We need to treat our water, right? I mean, so I think it's it's a wise move by the finance committee to recommend, and the board, I think, will probably go along with it. You start at the top, and you start working on that stuff, and you work your way down.
Scott's got a question.
I'd like to focus for a couple minutes on the O&M for distribution. You've got it set at 150,000.
Tell us what number, please.
40,480. Okay.
So that's the next page.
No, it's
No,
page
it's-
2 of 5.
That's page 2 of 5. Currently, through the first 9 months, we spent just over 163,000. So if you multiply by, or divide by 9, then multiply out that by 12 for a full year, if we ran at that same rate, we're running about 218,000 in distribution O&M. So would it be wise for us to bump that 150 up?
Well, we could, I guess, what I'm sort of splitting the difference between what we budgeted and what we're running to. My guess is, I mean, again, knock on wood, we haven't had a major leak for the last 6 weeks, and I am so hesitant to have just said that because we got, you know, new, fresh people here, you know, if we have a leak, we're gonna need to call in outside resources. But, you know, those costs are really reflective of some of those major blowouts that we had in, October and November of last year. So, I don't know, I'm willing to bump that. I think I would be hesitant to bump it much more. We're really kind of splitting the difference and hoping.
I was looking at maybe 180, kind of splitting.
Can't we reevaluate, that's what the budget's for, is down the
Yeah,
road,
we would do a
reevaluate.
6-month or whatever.
And
We're coming into the high water volume time where most of the breaks would normally happen.
Yeah, I think either one. I think it would be better to keep this where we're at and keep those monies in those discretionary reserves. And we have instituted our quarterly review, and I think we didn't adjust as much as we probably should have January of this year.
Yeah.
So we're now aware of it, so if we're sitting here in January of 2025, and this expense item, because we may have had some challenging times the previous 6 months, then we can make that adjustment. But it's a good one to point out.
That's what I had on that page.
I have a question on page 5.
Well, we're not
They're
there.
not there yet.
Well, 5.
I do want to just mention the wells and boosters. We've trimmed, this is the top of page 3, and it's the bottom of page 10 in the narrative. This is a very thin look at our utilities, water analysis, repairs, and chemicals there, because, again, knock on wood, we won't need our wells, because we're not in a drought, and we won't have an emergency that needs the wells. So we've trimmed, the finance committee recommended that we really try to get it very close to what we really think the actual costs are gonna be if all things go well, and move that money into our reserves. Under the administration in general, again, in the middle, starting the top third of page 3, starting at the top of page 11 of the narrative, I just would point out to you a couple of items. One is the significant cost for our auto insurance. You might recall, we had budgeted like 30-something thousand last time, and it cost us 65,000, or 62,000 in this current year. So we're currently budgeting for that and expecting that to be reasonably well. In organizational dues, again, this is pretty much, our aqua dues are around $16,000. We won't know what they are for sure. And our AWWA dues are very low. And I'm recommending that the district used to be a member of the California Rural Water Association. They have a lot of good potential training for some of our new operators. I don't know, something around $1,300 per chief. So that, and then holding off on the CSDA that shows that it's a benefit to join them quite yet. We've adjusted the director fees to be at what they will most likely be and projected versus what the potential of them are. In other words, you take $150 times 5 times 12, and that gets you close to $10,000. But we have at least one member that does not take their fee, so that's pretty accurate to what it's going to be. But the item right under it, 50512, we had a 0 in it last budget year. This budget year, that's our election costs. Last time it ran somewhere around $7,200. So we're budgeting for $8,000. That's a stab in it. I mean, it's just like, think what it was 2 years ago. Yes, because we really don't have any idea. If all 3 members of the board that are up for reelection file for reelection, and there are no others that file for election, then there will no longer be any need for this cost.
Correct.
We can shift it around. But we obviously will not know that until halfway through the year.
August, you'll know in August.
Yeah.
So, we still have some items to update on our server and computer maintenance. Our annual software cost, municipal software cost is less, half of what it used to be. One of the reasons why we selected CUSI was that though they were more expensive initially, they were about $35,000 to do the upgrade. We're not doing the customer software upgrade. But I do need to mention to you that we still need to purchase another workstation or 2. We have a 30-year-old phone system that needs to be replaced. The actual Comex thing there that's in the big box is no longer supported. There are times when we try to call out and we get busy signals, and there are times when you put in the area code and phone number, and it replies that, we can't make this call unless you dial 1, and then you dial 1-530 blah blah blah, and it says we cannot make this call because you don't need to dial 1. So I mean, there's a lot of challenges with this beautiful phone system, but at least in my opinion, I really want to wait until the middle of this year to identify what we're going to do on that. So that's why it's even though there's some money in here for computer stuff, haven't really done it on the phone system. I'm hoping, knock on wood, right across the street, TDS has fiber. Once we get fiber in here, we could go with a voice over internet phone system, and it would be
Light years.
Yeah. So in other words, the proposal to replace the Comex thing that we have, just to take the same thing we have and make it 2024, was $38,000. To get what we have now using voice over internet is like $5,000. So we're gonna hope that our phones don't go out. So the other reason is I'm convinced most of the problem is this TDS copper lines are in bad shape. And so why would we just stick a nice new machine that goes through the same lines that aren't any good? But just wanted to give you the heads up on that. Under the engineering, we've upped that amount because we do have a need to start working on that water plan. In other words, they've estimated that water plan is pretty costly to do. We've also been tracking with general engineering services much more than we had budgeted, so we're going to need to increase that budget anyway. And we're tracking at about 15,000, and so the extra amount is for the other engineering stuff. You'll see a significant reduction in our equipment maintenance, at least because the folding machine, RIP, it is no longer here, and the stamp machine is no longer here.
When we discussed, at the meeting,
this one, yeah, so,
Yep, she's
Yeah.
correct.
She is correct, yes. I have a note here that it is up 10,000 from the original draft.
I don't know. Actually, I can't remember if we talked about it at the finance committee on that one or not.
I don't think so.
I know I wrote all the cuts down, but I didn't write if we were.
Yeah, I wrote all those down too, but I probably thought, all right, well, this probably was a typo.
There's $10,000 more.
The, buildings and grounds and maintenance, that was also changed. We at one time had, proposed to replace, one of our air conditioner units, and so we will, try to, keep that thing, in the maintenance. But we do have, we are tracking at, that higher amount, that 17,000 amount. Cause one of the things that hadn't been budgeted for in the past was cleaning out the septic system. We actually lost our septic pump last year, which cost us, so we definitely will have, some of that. And then, as recorded, the special professional services, put some money in there to, Melissa had mentioned, aside from other items like phones and things like that, that we really could use, some help with the CPA. So we'd like to put out, some proposals to bring on a CPA to help us close out our 2022 and 2023 books and really do a review of our accounting to make sure that we're doing okay. So I don't know if you had more on that.
Yes, I do. It was actually, recommended very strongly by the auditor that we bring in a CPA to help me, do the journal entries to close out 2022 and get us set up correctly in QuickBooks, because there are some things, with the opening balances and things that need to be fixed that I am not quite sure of, and she cannot do more than recommend to help me with it. So she said that we need to have a CPA, and she very strongly recommended that we do it, and it sounded to me like she did not want to move forward with other audits until we did that.
So we're,
Stuck in a hard spot.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
we do have some resources we should probably get in our, as soon as possible. Get somebody signed up. By the end of the month if possible. All right, we did on the state, water fee, small community water fee, we did get that, reduced. That's the 50710 because of our disadvantaged community side of things. The water rights is not reducible, but, pretty close to what, they will, charge us this year. The GSA, 50720, Director McVeigh has reported that, the grant's been secured, they're moving forward, and so there was a willingness to put that to zero, to not have to budget anything this year. The LAFCO expense, that's pretty close to what it's projected. Now, both, Director Fickus and I went to last year's, LAFCO, budget meeting and got a bill that was still more than what we expected. So, but I think we got that. The employee benefits section, the main thing I wanna point out to you is that 51440 in our third quarter report was running significantly more than 80,000. It was all because of the, actuarial liability. So, in the, retirement system for CalPERS, each employee has basically 15% of their pay sent in to CalPERS. The district covers 7.68% of it, the employee covers 7.75%. Every year, CalPERS then does a review of the district's fund calculates whether or not it's funded with enough money to pay for its expected retirement benefit. And if it's not, that's what they identify as the unfunded actuarial liability, and they send us a bill, and last year they sent us a bill for around $100,000, and we paid for it, and I'm proposing that we add a line item here so that that payment actually gets tracked separately than our traditional payments, and that we budget $100,000. So one of the things I reported to the finance committee, we expect that we're gonna have about that amount due again for this coming year. But hopefully, investments have been doing well, and they'll do a report and find out that it's half of that or less than that. And we can come back, once we know, and we'll do it at maybe the first quarter, budget adjustment, and we can move some of that money into, investing into the treatment plant.
I think what we discussed on the actual liability was a possibility that it should be about 50,000 instead of 100,000.
No, a request was made, but because we don't need the funds for the train at this time, we felt it best to leave it there because this is what it was the prior year. And then if it's less, we can move it, but we still need funds to cover it.
Yeah,
So-
I think originally we showed cutting it in half, and then we said, okay.
Yeah, and I would encourage us to keep it here, and then, again, that'll be one of our first ones that we should know by our first budget review. And if it's significantly less than that, Director Fickus will say, ooh, another amount,
Yeah.
we can move it.
I will too.
Along those lines, is it in the MOU that the district eats the cost solely? And it's not shared by the employees since it's a shortfall?
That's a district, it's a district liability, it's not nothing to do with the employees. Again, in the MOU and in all employment agreements with CalPERS, there's the district and the employees share their annual contribution, and it's broken up, like I said, 7.68 and 7.75%, that's put in there. But that's a fund for the district, and every CalPERS member, every district, city, or everything else has this annual review, and they do this calculation. Usually what happens is, when the market isn't getting 8% return, the districts have to basically make up for that. And when the market is getting more than 8% return, or 7% return, whatever their expected return is, they send you a letter and say, you don't have to pay anything this year. They don't give us any money back, but
Of course not.
that goes in.
Well, this time.
The, another thing I wanna point out is under retiree benefits, you'll see now that the numbers are swapped. So in other words, previously, direct to retirees was $5,000, and the CalPERS health insurance was $95,000. When we did the OPEB fix, and we changed to the required minimum, we actually pay CalPERS health insurance costs are the $157 per retiree times 8 times the 12 months. And then you have your direct benefit that goes to the retiree through their HRA to make it up. So it's basically the same amount with its a slight bump on the cost. It's just allocated to the different accounts. If you go down to customer accounts and billing, we do have a little more in the supplies, and that's mostly because we have farmed out our mailing of bills to Harvest. So we get a bill for their costs, but we've saved, a commensurate twice amount for no longer having paper, ink, and toner costs from our printer, and of course the folding machines.
Headache.
The question I have goes back to the OPEB. Did we get reimbursed by the trust fund for that money that we outlaid? Those
Yeah.
individuals, okay.
About 88,000 of it. We were not able to ask for all 12 months of it, because when we asked, we needed the money, and, so we were able to get through April.
Okay.
And, which it should be sufficient. I think what we're gonna do is we'll wait, we have one more, promise payment, and then we'll figure out at the end of this calendar year if we need to ask for any other reimbursement.
Thank you.
The, last page, 505, Director Fickus has questions on this page, but I just want to quickly mention that, the top part is our payroll expenses. Again, this is, pretty much, standard as we've done in the past. Mostly just because we haven't been, in many ways, the distribution should be about 380,000. I think we keep it at where it is. Same thing with treatment, should be more like 252 or 253. Keep it here so that we have money to keep in our other account. And that way, if we, at the 6-month mark, see some changes, we can make adjustments. But otherwise, this is tracking with, what we have now. Just to remind the audience and the board, in our MOU, we have an annual cost of living adjustment with COLA. It's in the MOU. It is no less. It's the CPI, the previous 12-month CPI, from May to May. So I go on the business, Social Security and everything else Act website, and I get a chart that has all the monthly inflation numbers from May to May, and I divided by 12, and it came up to 3.2%. In our MOU, last year, it was over 4, but our MOU said maximum of 4, COLA minimum of 2, so 4% was the COLA. So these numbers are reflective of that. The 7,000, the 2205 to 7,000 and 2225, those are just the same numbers as our designated revenue. That's just my way of trying to move those out of the overall revenue, so that, because we can't spend them, they're designated. But again, those show up on our balance sheet that we report to you, not in our P&Ls. The operating reserve, 4.1%, that's our usage rate. So if we attain that gross revenue of $505,000, that 4.1% is that. And then the same thing with the capital modernization reserve, 1.8% of the base rate. I'm recommending that we have $10,000 just set aside in emergency fund reserve, and then this discretionary fund reserve. So that's really the difference, the 153, now 163, that is between the reduced expenses of our water supply, all the way through our other expenses and reduced here and there. So that is what is available for our mid-year adjustments. That's what's available for getting right up there at the treatment plant once we know what it's gonna cost. So there's your zeroed out budget. So balanced budget. Director Fickus, you had a question. I know you do, but
Yeah, two things was, I had the 163 and saw the 153 and thought, okay, where's the 10,000? But Pam found where that was over. So explain to me, because I'm just not getting it, if the $10,000 like for the emergency fund reserve, are we putting that in the reserve more as an expense? So is it really, or do we already have 10,000 in there and we're not really putting any more in? So is it an expense or is it an extra $10,000? I'm confused.
You wanna see it on the income side, in a sense.
No.
Okay.
You wanna see
Uh,
the
Because
balance of
it's
the account
coming
currently.
in,
Yeah,
where's it being expensed, okay.
yeah. I mean, are we,
it's my plan to put $10,000 into that reserve.
okay. That's
I
what,
think that reserve account currently has like $428.
Yes.
Okay, there we
Yes.
go, okay, that explains that.
I think that's the one that has 456.
Yes,
There's
yeah.
someone else in it.
It's the ridiculous. And on mine, the discretionary.
Wait.
Sorry.
No, that was it, we're good.
Okay.
No.
On the May 20th version, you had, 7165 in there, on that discretionary.
Yeah,
Having tracked through the requested reductions, changes through this, that change came up to 178,500. So I'm kind of wondering what the variance is in there.
well, the discretionary fund balance reserve on the May 20th draft was 7,165.
Yeah, that line item.
Which one, what number, 75900?
Yeah, on the May 20th.
And now it's 163, 665.
Yeah,
153.
well, it's
The
really.
total is down below.
It's 163, he just,
Okay.
because of the
We
10,000.
fixed that one, 10,000.
So what's the question?
Oh, I was looking at it, and because of the changes that the finance committee talked about, total of 178,500.
Oh, because there was already a
And it
little bit
didn't
in
seem, the
there.
numbers didn't seem to line up
Got
at
it.
all. So I wasn't sure if my math was off or what.
Because previously it was reported, yeah, the $7,165.
Correct.
Aha,
So I'm trying to understand
Well, aside from the one noted item, the 50 versus 40,000, I believe this May 22 version represents everything that was recommended by the finance committee. And I went back and looked at everything I wrote down, and all the changes and savings. So, I don't necessarily have an answer. I'm
Okay.
pretty darn confident because I've checked, unlike previous versions that had unbalanced budgets because nobody checked the spreadsheet cells. I've checked all the spreadsheet cells.
Well,
163, 655 is gonna be the number.
it. I can live with that because we're doing a review.
yeah,
Okay. I was just doing the math myself, and I came up with, 178,500 on our change. And, including adjusting for that 10,000 on the,
Yeah.
engineering. And, the numbers just didn't seem to quite match up, so I thought I'd ask about it.
Yeah.
you know,
I do appreciate, and I hope we've left you enough room. I know you wanna underestimate income and slightly overestimate expenses as a tool for balancing the budget, and I appreciate your approach to that. Have we left you enough room?
Well,
Because they're kinda squeezing you a little tight.
yeah, but it's the policy call out of board and policy that I am hearing from the finance committee recommended to the board is to focus what they've squeezed out into the treatment plant, and that's what we're gonna do.
Okay.
And I think this provides enough flexibility if we're sitting here in January and it's like, well, we squeezed here and we really need to adjust. Or, well, we squeezed here and we can squeeze more. I think we gotta give, and I think, that's the whole reason to have that discretionary reserve. My use of goal, the way I've done it in the past, the way I budgeted it last year is I underestimate revenue and I like to, I round down on revenue and round up on expenses.
Sure.
Because that gives you a little room to move. I think in this case, we still have the flexibility and we're gonna be able to focus on what needs to get focused on.
Okay, following up on that, in an attempt to get some guidance from you, since you have to manage all this, do you have thoughts on how you want to handle, or how we would pay for the repairs to train 6 and possibly train 4 if it comes up that we wanna try to do that? cushions in there? Or what are your thoughts on how we might finance that?
Well, if we do not do an engineering review, we will have to find a way to finance it ourselves.
Correct.
We will need an engineering review to go to the state for, any kind of money. I mean, they say, okay, this thing costs $450,000. That's what I'm hoping that we get. You can fix them both for this type of thing. I've talked to Katie Connigan, our state, representative from DBW, and, you know, they could find it in their, view to consider it emergency funding, even though it's something that's happened over a long time, but needs urgently to be repaired. I don't know if we can get any grant monies that's not part of the emergency side. We've already been told that our distribution grant is gonna get pushed off.
Right.
So that's one way to finance the repairs, and then we have resources, we've budgeted resources to be able to match that and to get it going as quickly as possible. So I think that would be pretty good lever. In other words, instead of asking for 100% grant for a $500,000 project, we can say, we got a $500,000 project and we got $150,000, we need $350, that's gonna be a lot easier for the granting agencies to do it. If that doesn't happen, quickly, then we could potentially, now with the new bank, maybe we can get a little short-term 2 or 3 year loan to get it done. Maybe there's, we go to the state and their SRF loan, or revolving fund loan, which usually has like a 1 or 2% interest rate. So those, I don't have any other answers to the question, but those would be the 3 options.
Nothing on the federal side though? Clean Water Act or?
No. I reported to the board 6 months ago that I applied for a federal grant called, and I called it the Wildfire Assessment and Resiliency Grant, to do a review, $400,000, do a review of our sustainability as it relates to fire, whatever the words that they like to see. 6 months later, they finally gave me a notice that said, it's gonna take us another 6 months to assess and see whether or not we're gonna allocate any money. So,
I understand.
I think we have a little more urgency than the federal government's urgency.
One of the things that, and I didn't see where I could fit it in, cause I called this week, and spoke with you when you said bring it up at this meeting, is that we have the dump truck, which, I don't know what it's valued at, and I really, Melissa, do you know how much we owe on the dump truck?
63,000 and change.
And I saw one for sale on Craigslist, and I don't know if it was comparable for 85. Cause I think, like I told you, this is the time where they need dump trucks, and we might be able to get a better buyer. Plus, we pay $254 a month, just in interest on our loan, and we have a loan on it. So, and we have nobody to drive it. And I really feel that, you know, your idea of getting a dump trailer and the ability to get staff that can use our equipment is vitally important. I don't know how we fit that in with this budget, but it's a thought.
Well, I think it's good, like, as I mentioned when we were going through the distribution, division's budget, and talking about the equipment and investing in equipment, and that we're gonna defer looking at a back trailer. Maybe, I didn't mention the dump truck then, but I would say with our interim part-time distribution supervisor, one of his tasks is to do a review of our equipment, make some recommendations. We've had conversations about, do we still need a dump truck, and we go with the dump trailer and all the rest of that stuff. Not sure how fast we can move on that. I really don't wanna make a rash decision, but I also feel like, you know, we need to make it work for the people that we have. I can't resist mentioning that while we're deferring the purchase of a vac trailer, Centerville was taking delivery of a new one on Friday. Cost them about $75,000.
And they don't pay their bill on time.
Rio Alto, which is a sewer and water district smaller than us, just south, just in Tehama County, is taking delivery on a vac trailer.
There were 2 for sale in Craigslist.
Cottonwood is looking at it. In other words, the whole world is going to the vac trailer. And you could probably replace your backhoe and a bunch of other things with vac trailers. Now that you've got utilities underground, it's a much more sensitive thing when you're going in there to go after a leak. It used to be a backhoe operator hits a pipe, you spring a leak. You shut off the water and you fix the leak. Backhoe operator hits a cable or a high voltage electric line, that's a different thing. So everybody is going to the vac trailer world, and we are gonna have to go that route. Now, what our mix is to fill that in, is it a dump truck and a backhoe and everything? Probably not, probably more dump trailer, probably more a mini excavator, those kind of things. But we can't avoid going down that route too much longer. So, I'm gonna be meeting with Centerville to see, hey, if there's any arrangements, in which when we need one, can we just pay for that yours instead of going to I-5 rentals and having one that doesn't work. So those are things that we'll look at maybe on the end. But again, I wanted to bring up the dump truck issue here in the public setting because we do need to look at whether or not we can dispose of that if we don't need it and get out from under that one. Mr. Chair, are there any questions from the audience?
Anybody got a question?
Some of me, but I just nod yes.
I spent a lot of time, but I do think it's important. So number one of the biggest responsibilities of a district and a board is to do a budget and to make policies on it. So,
You didn't need a motion or anything on this, just,
At the board meeting.
yeah, so I'll finish with, really, so that everybody, I'm quite aware that a couple members of, the board were in the audience of the finance committee, so they're really knowledgeable about a lot of this, but this is really for the public, for the video, taking any feedback, kind of a budget workshop, and then, on June 19th, we will have a public hearing to adopt the final budget.
okay.
We're not done yet?
Oh,
All right.
great.
But thank you to the board, and I want to thank the finance committee for doing some good hard work on this as well. I do want to get to this last item. I've mentioned to the board multiple times that, with the, when our D3, T3 person left, well, first we had one that left a year ago now, and then I appointed somebody, in this case Chad, to that position. Then he left. It was pretty clear that we weren't gonna be able to bring in a half-time for the treatment plant and a half-time for distribution. And the reality was, Bill really needed more than half-time, and the position was spending more time here doing distribution stuff, a lot of it for management reasons and other things, but as a result. We have a very good employee who has stayed. We've lost 5 employees in the last 7 weeks, okay? We lost half our staff. We've recruited, we've hired 3, we're gonna be interviewing, admin assistants tomorrow. Hopefully we'll get a distribution supervisor. But to get a T3, which is your licensed T3 operator in treatment, it takes almost 1,800 hours at the treatment plant doing the work. Our current job description for a T3 says you gotta be able to get your T3 in 3 months.
Wow.
So, a lot of districts, I was just talking to the Bernie district today at lunchtime, and they have an operator in training program, and they have somebody from Chaska College that's actually currently in that position. And so this is an operator in training. All it does is it takes the T3 position and give it 12 months to get its T3. It also states that the pay scale is the D2 operator pay scale, and that this gives me the authority to up to step 3, because basically we have a D2 that's interested. And so, you know, if we put them in there before they become a T3, they get paid 2 steps higher in the D2 spot. The other thing too is I'm recommending that we have the sign letter, that you authorize me to sign the sign letter, so that we get this position as part of the MOU. So all the other provisions of the MOU cover this position. I got a note back from the union today that they approved this side letter, and they approved this updated job description. Like I said, just changes the one thing down at the bottom, which is your certification criteria from 3 to 12 months. And, you know, 1,800 hours means you gotta be 30 hours plus at that treatment plant. And the other reason to put this on this agenda instead of waiting till the 19th is Bill and Brandon have a bunch of vacation scheduled, so I do want to get this filled by the end of the month so that they can get them trained and ready to be able to handle stuff.
But that leaves us then with all the newbies on the distribution side.
That is correct. And
We have Paul to show him what to do.
well, yeah, we still have, you know, I gotta say, you know, Brandon in particular, Bill in particular, have been great helping, because, you know, to be on call, you have to have your certification. So Jeffrey, since in the last 5 weeks, could have been on call every single weekend. Brandon has stepped in to take over some of that. Bill has taken some of the weekend while he was both on call for treatment, he was due on call for distribution. Jeffrey's got some medical emergencies with his family, so we really need those guys to step up. Now, the new guys, one's already got his certification exam scheduled next week. The others are just waiting to get theirs scheduled. Tony, our interim, is training them and teaching them the best we can. We may have to have Jeffrey help out some for a couple of weeks after we put in this, just to get us to that spot. We do want to see if we can find somebody to backfill that distribution spot with a certification. We have at least one applicant for distribution supervisor that has a D3 certification, so they can obviously step in and cover some of that.
So what do we need to vote on?
I just need a motion and a second and a vote to authorize my signature on the side.
I make a motion that we, authorize Paul to sign the operator in training position for the district.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Unless there's somebody in the audience that wishes to make an hour-long speech, we can adjourn.
Anybody want to
I knew that would get